Welcome to this episode of Wealth Coherence.
Even just broadening that idea, it's not even just about like the pressure that we're felt to make a financial decision, but just we are kind of designed our whole lives to be always looking for the next thing to make us feel better.
Mhm.
And I just gave a keynote this past week, and I was talking about that if you look at your life, like anybody can prove this to themselves. Like I don't need to convince anybody. If you just look at it for a minute, look at like from when I was a kid. When I was kindergarten, I just wanted to be in high school because that's what my sister was. When I was high school, I just wanted a boyfriend because then I could be popular. And then when I had a boyfriend, I needed to know where I was going to college because all my friends were going to Ivy League. And then I needed to know where I was going to get my next job. And all of these things were thinking, if I just had this thing, whether it's know this thing or get to this next stage or buy this object, I'm going to feel better. And then, I had to have married because always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And then I wanted a baby so bad. And I finally had a baby. And then I thought, well, if I just get divorced, everything would be okay. And it's just this we are constantly in this place of trying to feed something that's already there. We've just lost track of it. We've just lost a sense of who we are.
Yeah, and I think that that's also what people are experiencing right now with the doom scrolling, the social media, where it's like, oh, just one more, just one more, just one more. And it's like that experience of, oh, I'm just going to feel better with this next thing that's outside of me. It's never going to be the satisfying thing. And I often use the phrase, you can never have enough of what you don't really want. I'd love for you to share a little bit about with your work and all these different things that you've dove into and looked at what are the best tools and how can I use this with my speaking and with my clients. What do you find supports people in getting to that coherent state most effectively and easily so that they can feel like they're making decisions from a really good place?
Well, I think that, one of the things that we really suffer from, in addition is what I call spiritual overachieving. And I think a lot of us really, we understand these tools and we know how to use them and we know that we're able to be in a more coherent state. And when we're really doing the tool and really getting physiologically shifted, that's great. But a lot of times what is happening because of the way the mind works is that we're kind of doing these processes and checking them off the list. So I'm going to do my meditation or I'm going to do my coherence ritual and I'm going to check it off my list, but we never really get into coherence. And then the problem with that, and this is the big problem that I think people really don't recognize, is that there's two parts of a habit. There's the thing that you're doing or trying not to do and creating the habit, whether that's not spending as much money or not, shrinking from, a lot of times higher net worth people, are feeling like they can't be themselves, or share, what's going on, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to accomplish, whatever habit you're trying to overcome in yourself. There's that. But the real damning part is the judgment. The second half of that habit is how we judge ourselves when we do or don't do the thing we're trying to do. So in other words, just to give a really easy example, if I'm trying not to eat sugar and then I eat sugar, the second part of that habit is I'm going to judge myself for that. And judge and shame and those types of low vibration emotions are the most damaging emotions because they function in the background. Like we know when we're angry, when we're really angry, it's easy to say like, yeah, I'm pissed. But what we don't recognize is that very often we're walking around 24/7 with a low level guilt, anxiety, shame, self-judgment, or judgment on others, world experience, world events or whatever. We're constantly there. And it's a huge draw on energy. So one of the things that I really want people to begin to see is how the mind is so tricky and it is so deceiving. And when you are in a thought process and you're getting identified with your thoughts, this is bad. I shouldn't have had the sugar. That's bad. You're not coherent, for one thing, but you are sabotaging the whole thing. You are identified with that thought. So when we're identified with a thought, there's no way we can be coherent. So one thing that I really work with people on is this thing called self-observation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful book by Red Hawk called Self-Observation. It's an amazing book. I've referred it to like a gajillion people. I actually run groups on it, and I'm interviewing him for the second time actually next week.
Oh, nice.
It's amazing. But it's this idea of really being able to understand what is self-observation, not with the mind, because the mind thinks it's observing itself and it says this is horrible, you shouldn't have done that. That's not a self-observation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in true self-observation, you are not judging what is happening in your inner world. And so a lot of this is before we even, or I would say in one way, before we get to the coherence state, but I would also say sometimes you can only get there by going through the coherence state, is just beginning to understand the concept of you are not as aware as you think you are. And if you are thinking, we tend to think our emotions instead of feel our emotions. And we tend to think that we're being self-aware when really we're just thinking about what's good and what's bad about what we did or didn't do. And anytime you're thinking good and bad, you're not in coherence, you're in judgment.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
So well said. Another aspect to that I think is really important for people to understand is, and let's go back to your example about the sugar. There was a thought that you had before you ate the sugar that told you it would be a good idea to eat the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love to tell people is the same voice, the same where that came from to tell you to eat the sugar is the same voice that's now berating you for having eaten the sugar. So you actually don't want it to get to win both ways. So if you're going to listen to it to eat the sugar, even though you promised yourself you wouldn't, and then it starts telling you how awful you are as a human being because you did it, it's like, oh, wait, you tricked me into eating the sugar in the first place. And now you're telling me and you can actually bring humor to it. And I like to almost bring this sense of depersonalizing it. Like you were talking about when you identify with the thoughts, like let it be. There's a great book called Taming Your Gremlins. And it's all about like externalizing that idea. And I'm all about like whatever helps us be free of this like unbelievable chatterbox that does not support us.
Oh, right.
And if you just get it that like, oh, I got tricked to doing the thing I didn't think I wanted to do. So I obviously did want to do it. And now that same voice is telling me I shouldn't have done it. I don't want it to win. I don't get it. It doesn't get to win both ways, right? So then it's like you get to be empowered even in that moment. And I love that idea of the self-observation without the judgment piece. And it's an incredibly disciplined approach to ourselves. It's not an easy thing to do because our minds are designed and wired to judge basically everything. So
Yeah, it's nearly impossible. Yeah. And I think, one of the things that you're talking about, there's so many different parts of us. One way that I like to look at that as well is to think about having an aim. Gurdjieff talked about this a lot, to have wish and have aim. And there's there's parts of us that they don't care at all about our weight, about our health, about, those parts, we call them lunatics. They're just like, have the sugar, who cares? Like that part is not like the part that wants to be healthy and live a long life and all that stuff. Those parts are nowhere in sight when this lunatic comes around saying, no, the sugar, that sounds like a great idea. Right. And so what has to happen is that we have to have this idea of a larger aim. So that, yes, of course I want the sugar, or of course I want to gossip, or of course I want to start scrolling because that's going to help me manage, whatever is coming up. But if my larger aim is to be present, if my larger aim is to lead, in this situation, my family wealth from a place of integrity and a place of inner knowing and sovereignty, then I'm not going to be able to have the side conversation or the gossip or whatever it is, or succumb to these, the kids want this to happen, and so I have to do it because I got to make them happy. I'm not going to be able to do that, even though the lunatic in me, that part wants to just do it, just make everybody happy. It'll be easier. It's better, right? But it's very, very hard because we are such habitual beings. And so these are habits of thought and habits of emotion, habits of behavior, as we know, are the same as any other habit. And so when we lose sight of our aim and we didn't do the thing that we said was our aim or our intention, it's just so very important not to judge ourselves at that moment, right? And to not beat ourselves up, because nobody ever changes anything from beating ourselves up. And then we're just making ourselves more incoherent. We're draining more energy.
Yeah, and it's a good point because there's always these learning opportunities we have in life. And the moment we go into an incoherent state and we're berating ourselves or judging ourselves or criticizing ourselves, we shut off the learning. That part of our brain that's able to pay attention and get great information about what the situation that's in front of us, we don't get access to. And so
Right.
that's a whole other aim to have is look, I want to be present and I want to learn, like, how can I do this better? Oh, what had me think to do that? So it had me make that choice, so that we bring that self-awareness that you said, but from a loving, kind place as opposed to a mean, judgmental place.